I started playing music when I was very young, probably around the age of 4. Piano lessons, piano. And then I became interested in, later on, in other instruments, like the flute, trombone, percussion. And as I started to get this interest in other instruments, but still playing the piano all along, I started to also be really interested in how music works. And so I started composing just as a kind of a hobby when I was very young. And then I went to a concert of contemporary music, music written in, well, at that time it was music written in the 20th century. And before the concert, they had a talk, and they were explaining how the music is put together. And they talked about how the composer had taken this idea and then brought it back here, and then flipped it upside down, and then turned it backwards, and all these kinds of things that the composer had done. And I felt like, in a way, that was sort of getting to sort of peek behind the curtain and know how the music is, the sound is put together, how it's organized. And that was something that was really interesting to me. And at the time, for most of my childhood, I actually wanted to be an engineer. My father was an engineer. He was a mechanical engineer. Worked also in as a project manager building oil, what do you call them, oil platforms. But then by the time I got to the end of high school, I realized that I've been doing all this music all along, and was really interested in how music works more than how, I don't know, how some machine works. And that I sort of had lost connection with my friends who were going into science. I felt like I had less in common with them, and that's when I made the decision to pursue composition as a profession. So it's completely 180. Through probably my last year of high school, told my parents, I don't want to do engineering, I want to study music, which was not something they wanted to hear. Not terribly exciting, but they were supportive. And I was also strong enough in music to be accepted into a good program at university. And so I started studying composition actually really formally at university, which is often the case for composers. Composers are not like, you hear the story of a violinist who started when they're really young and it's very, I started young, but as a composer, really not started in earnest really until I was in college and university. So that's kind of it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's about this ability or this technique or craft of taking something small, a small idea, and turning it into something bigger. And I think there's a kind of a magic there, and an amazing craft. Of course, you have to learn, you have to know, do it a lot to be able to do it. But I think but then beyond that, I think the more I composed, I started realizing that composition was also about learning about myself. I think in a way, that's what art is. It's not just about sort of doing something or getting somewhere, but it's actually a mirror. It's looking a mirror up to yourself. And it's funny because you don't actually know that when you first start composition. You think you're sort of, in a way, like an engineer. You think you're writing, you're building a sonata, okay, you're building a concerto, but then you realize that you're not building, you've been looking into a mirror the whole time, and you're actually, in a sense, doing a self-portrait, maybe. And I felt, that's where then it kind of became a new layer, that the composition was, in a way, a sort of a self-portrait all along. I didn't realize it, but it was. And so I think that's when composition also took on instead of another layer of meaning for me. Because I thought that's a really exciting job to have. You're not just building something, but you're learning about yourself at the same time. I think when I was an engineer, I was really interested in aeronautics. So when I see people flying drones around, if I was a kid now and I could have a drone, I'd be really excited, yeah, because I'm a little bit older. We didn't have drones when I was a kid, but now it seems like anybody can have that experience of understanding how, the drone works and things like that. I think that's a lot of fun. So I think that's about it. Otherwise, I really am much more interested at this point, in composition. I think also part of what I do here at UST, really the central core mission of what we do is to make the creative arts interesting and engaging for those who are not pursuing it as their profession. And that's then really, really interesting for me, because I had that background as an aspiring engineer, let's say. And I understand the value of creative arts and music for anybody, whether you're pursuing music as a profession or not. It has a value. In a strange way, yeah. It sort of worked out in an odd way. I was there was the intent to build a new program here. I was had started a chamber music series in Southern California, where I grew up. And so as a composer, I also had administrative background. I knew how to work with musicians, how to put together a series. And those kinds of skills, I think, helped me in this position here, because it was very much about taking the existing programs and building them. Professor Bright Sheng is the artistic director of the music program, and really helped to start the initiative. And so it was through my connection with him that we've been building this program since 2010, when I first arrived at UST.
So almost before you came here, this zero, right? The HQ, the music aspects of HQUST.
Well, I wouldn't say zero. No, UST had music courses. It was just, I think our goal has been to sort of bring it all together into an academic program, into a real program that can stand next to the other academic programs at the university, and I think at the same time enrich the life of the university through concerts, through performing arts, through exhibitions, through all kinds of arts events. That's what's been really fun, is to sort of, I hope we've had some kind of a transformative effect. Everybody who's involved in the arts at UST, I think we've all played a role in transforming the feel of the campus, and that's been fun to be a part of. Yeah, I started the course in 2010. It was, again, very much in that same spirit, which was to give students a taste of the history of Western classical music. That's the main goal, but I think the secondary goal for me too was to expose students to creativity. So it's about teaching not as a kind of a scholar would, as in terms of a kind of a list of works, but rather teaching how a composer thinks. And that's our philosophy, is that as a composer, I'm teaching you as I would think as a composer, so that you understand how the music is put together, and then at the same time the student understands the music from a more active perspective. They think of it as not something that's sort of dead or in a library somewhere, but something that's still living. I really do. I think it's important that students watch music happening. And so whenever I can, I demonstrate at the piano. And I think that's been, I'm glad to hear you say that. I appreciate that. I think it's been fun to keep that incorporated as well. There's piano demonstrations, and then we also have the intimacy of creativity. We have lots of different ways so that this isn't just about taking notes in a classroom, but it is about enjoying it, about having an active engagement. I offer the course. This is kind of our sort of introductory course for a lot of students who may have no background in music. So I felt it was important that as many students should take it as we can accommodate. So we offer it every term. So I've taught it, this is my 7th year, so I guess, 13th time offering the course. Yeah.
Still feel very excited about the course?
Yeah. You know why? Because when I first taught the course, this was new for everybody, for me and for the students at UST. And I think not only did we want to expand what we were doing in the arts, but we also wanted to elevate the level of study so that even students who had no background in music were still taking a serious course, a course that really challenged them. And so every term, that's what's great about UST students is they're really ambitious, and any goal you set for them, they'll meet. So every term, I'm always adding some new feature. I remember when I first offered listening examples on an exam, and a lot of people were really concerned about that. But by now, we do a lot of listening in exams and self-tests, things like that, and students really take to it. I mean, I think people do really well, much better than I think they even expect. Once you have a taste for it, again, it's important that that students be listening. If this was simply just a class about taking notes, about the history of the pieces, I just don't think it would be as fun, as engaging. Yeah, that's right. I think students, in a way, are studying Italian. They're studying some French, some German, and that's been sort of a fun feature of the course, is to ask students to say back the words in that language, just so they can try it out too. So when they hear me say an Italian word, I speak Italian, so I can speak with an accent. If they just hear me speak it, then they go, oh, what's that? But if I ask them to say it back, then they go, oh, okay, it's easier to remember. And I think then it kind of, everybody can giggle and have a good time. That's been fun, and been a fun part of the course too.
Yeah, it's really cool to listen to you say like opera buffa.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I can only speak that in English.
Yeah, if you say it the way an Italian would, you actually hear that what it's about. Opera buffa. I mean, it sounds like a joke. It sounds like a made-up word, But that's the idea. It's supposed to be silly. Yeah, and I think maybe then it hopefully helps students remember what it means too. It's always a tricky question to answer because I think sometimes you just don't know. So composers can write in different ways. Somebody can ask you specifically to write a piece of music for an ensemble or for a particular occasion, and in that case, then it's sort of shaped what that piece is going to be about. But if there's no request or any specific demand, then the composer's kind of free to sort of come up with things. And I think it's for me, actually, it's not about sort of trying to force it. If I've got something on my mind, then I'll just work it through as an improvisation at the piano. And if there's something that I find there that's of interest musically, then I'll pursue that. And where that comes from, then it's always you're sort of doing it reverse engineering. We go back to engineering again. So if you reverse engineer it, you go back after the piece is done, you go, well, where did that come from? Because I don't know. Maybe I knew a little bit when I wrote it, but it's only after the piece is done maybe I actually can really discover where it came from. I just finished writing a piece that's quite angry, and I don't know why. The piece has been performed in the U.S., in Asia, now by a Berlin Philharmonic member, in Germany. A lot of people are playing the piece, and it's an angry piece, and but that's what it is. I guess that's what I had in mind when I wrote it. It's fun too to teach Huma 1102 because we can see the same thing in music of other composers. I mean, Bach wrote some beautiful, sad music, but he wasn't necessarily even in a sad moment of his life. He was writing his saddest music at probably the best moments of his life. So it's hard to say when there's a direct connection, but it goes back to that mirror idea I mentioned earlier. Eventually, there's something there. There's something in the mirror that you recognize. And sometimes you don't recognize it, so you can stand back from it and say, "Oh, yeah, that's what it is." But that's part of the fun.